I came back from a dentist appointment expecting to find a quiet barn and a couple of lazy goats. Instead, I found 12 delivery trucks, a forklift I didn't own, and Karen, dressed in a hot pink power suit, live streaming herself taping boxes shut while shouting, "Welcome to Barnazon, baby." At first, I thought maybe I'd driven onto the wrong ranch. I reversed halfway down the gravel drive, trying to figure out if this was a mirage or an HOA fever dream. But nope, there was my red tractor, the old tire swing from when my niece visited last summer, and the faint but unmistakable smell of cows who did not sign up for this nonsense. My barn, my land, my goats, who were now wearing promotional baseball caps that said, "Ship happens." Karen had turned my barn into a fulfillment center, and the only fulfilling thing about this was my rapidly escalating urge to scream into a pillow. I parked the truck and climbed out slowly, like one of those action movie characters walking into an ambush. A delivery guy zipped by with a dolly stacked to the ceiling. Karen caught sight of me and waved like we were old friends sharing a lemonade on a porch, not mortal enemies connected only by a property line and mutual loathing. "Oh, you're back early," she called out, like I'd interrupted her spa day instead of catching her mid-heist. "I meant to text you. I assumed it'd be fine. You're barely using the barn, and I've got over 10,000 followers now. Isn't this exciting?" I stared at her like she'd grown a second head, or possibly a third. Behind her, a confused goat was nibbling the corner of a package marked "Fragile Face Serums." One of the delivery drivers yelled that someone was double-parked behind the chicken coop. Another worker dropped a box labeled "Premium Dog Bowls" right onto my granddad's antique hay bales. I took a long breath. Then I exhaled. Then I inhaled again, mostly because I couldn't believe this was real and I needed air before I passed out in fury. Karen jogged over in her leopard print wedges, waving a laminated paper. "Look, I even got HOA permission." Well, kind of. I submitted a request to the subcommittee and didn't hear a no, so I figured that counted. She laughed. I didn't. She blinked. "You're not laughing?" I asked her to step out of the barn for a second, as politely as I could muster without bursting a vein. She obliged with the dramatic flair of someone who believed she was about to win Entrepreneur of the Year. I held the door open for her. She stepped through it with a spin, still holding the laminated joke of a permit like it was a badge. Then I calmly reached into my pocket, pulled out the barn key, and turned the lock with a solid, satisfying click. There was a long silence. Karen tilted her head. "Wait. What did you just unlock it or lock it?" "Locked it," I said. "Tight as a tick." Her mouth opened and closed like a guppy. "But, my inventory is in there." I shrugged. "Shouldn't have left it on someone else's property then." She started sputtering, waving her hands and screeching something about business rights and supply chains. I ignored it all, walked past her, climbed into my truck, and gave her one last wave through the open window. "Oh," I said, putting the truck in gear. "If anyone calls, tell 'em I've gone fishing." And I did. I drove 3 hours north, launched my little boat on Lake Idle, and spent the next 7 days catching trout, sipping cold beer, and watching eagles fly overhead. No phone. No internet. Just peace and the sound of water lapping against the hull while back at home, the barn cooked like a microwave and Karen's entire cardboard empire slowly imploded. Apparently, she tried calling me 74 times, sent over 24 emails, posted on every HOA message board accusing me of theft, obstruction, and, my personal favorite, barn-based terrorism. I didn't hear any of it though. I was too busy gutting a beautiful rainbow trout and singing to myself. I did get one call, just one, from Sheriff Dunleavy. He's an old friend of my dad's, and I'd given him a heads up before I left. "Karen's gone and filled my barn with junk," I told him. "I locked the place and left. Just letting you know in case she calls claiming I kidnapped her Amazon stock." He laughed for a solid minute, then said, "If she files anything, I'll let her explain to the judge why she broke into a private building to start a warehouse." When I came back into town, my voicemail was full. My favorite one? Karen crying to someone in the background. The organic mascara melted, Brenda. Do you understand what that means? There were also 2 HOA messages, one passive-aggressive and one aggressive-aggressive, asking me to cease interfering with commerce. The cherry on top was a notice on my front gate. Urgent barn access requested immediately. It was printed in Comic Sans, which told me everything I needed to know. I didn't reply to any of it. I made myself a sandwich. Then I walked back to the barn, unlocked the door, and let the hot, humid scent of expired essential oils and despair waft into the morning air. The place looked like a scene from a shipping apocalypse. Boxes had collapsed. Tapes had peeled. The goats had taken their caps off and were now chewing them in protest. And Karen? Nowhere to be found. But I knew she'd be back. And when she did, I was going to be ready. Because this wasn't just about the barn anymore. This was war. And I had 7 days of fish-induced clarity and a plan that was going to blow this HOA wide open. Karen came back the very next morning wearing sunglasses the size of salad bowls and a vengeance that smelled like melted lip balm and failed ambition. She stood in front of the barn, arms crossed, flanked by 2 guys in neon vests who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. One of them held a clipboard. The other held a drone remote. Karen, meanwhile, was mid-rant on a live stream, pacing dramatically in front of the locked barn doors like a revolutionary leader. "This is a gross abuse of power," she declared to her audience of mildly confused viewers. "I am being targeted for being a woman in business and for being efficient. He's jealous. That's what this is. Jealousy." The drone buzzed into the sky like a mechanical mosquito, filming her from above. "Barncam 24 is live," she announced. "Don't forget to like, follow, and donate. I'm unlocking this barn with or without permission." She dramatically held up a fork. Not a key. Not bolt cutters. A literal metal fork from her kitchen drawer. She jabbed it at the lock like she was trying to hack her way into Fort Knox using picnic supplies. I was sitting inside the house with a cup of coffee, watching it all unfold on the outdoor security cameras I'd installed the month before when I caught a raccoon trying to break into the feed room. Karen, apparently, hadn't noticed the big, obvious dome cameras mounted right under the barn eave. Or maybe she had and assumed they were decorative. Either way, I had every second recorded, including the moment she shrieked when the fork snapped in half and hit her in the shin. By noon, the drama had reached HOA headquarters. I got a call from Myrna, the HOA secretary, who sounded like she'd been sucking on a lemon and was about to choke on the rind. "There are reports of an incident involving your barn," she said through gritted teeth. "Karen says you've unlawfully trapped her inventory, and that it's heating to dangerous levels." I told Myrna I'd be happy to show the board the footage of Karen breaking and entering last week, and using my barn as a bootleg Amazon warehouse. Myrna said something about pending review and hung up. 30 minutes later, I saw on camera that Karen had returned with a homemade protest sign and 3 folding chairs. She'd brought backup. 3 women from 2 streets over joined her, all carrying matching signs that read, "Let her ship," and "E-commerce is not a crime." One of them wore a cape made out of recycled shipping labels. They parked themselves in front of the barn and began chanting something that sounded like a combination of motivational slogans and passive-aggressive complaints about the post office. Meanwhile, Karen launched her new hashtag, BarnGate2025. She even had shirts. Inside the barn, the temperature had climbed to near summer levels, and the smell of essential oils mixed with goat poop was not something any candle company would bottle up for retail. One of the goats had somehow chewed into a box labeled Natural Beard Growth Kit, and now had a minty-looking goatee. A chicken had laid an egg inside a shoebox marked, "Do not crush." The boxes themselves were starting to warp, their adhesive tape surrendering to the heat and humidity, like even the packaging knew it wasn't supposed to be there. I spent the afternoon on my back porch, drinking sweet tea and watching the chaos escalate like a low-budget soap opera. Every so often, one of the protesters would knock on my door and shout about entrepreneurial suppression and barn justice. I offered them lemonade once. They declined. Said they'd brought coconut water infused with elderberry. I said, "Suit yourselves," and went back inside. Later that day, the local sheriff showed up. Not Dunleavy this time, but Deputy Kyle, who had the expression of a man who had seen one too many HOA meltdowns and was rethinking his career choices. He took one look at Karen, one look at the barn, and sighed like someone had just handed him a jigsaw puzzle made entirely of beige. "I've been told there might be a hostage situation," he said dryly, flipping through his notepad. "Unless you count the goat that won't leave the box marked skincare, there's no hostage situation," I replied. Karen stormed over. "He's detaining my inventory," she shrieked. "I have legal rights. That barn is a commercial asset now." Kyle raised one eyebrow. "You got any paperwork proving this land or structure belongs to you?" Karen waved her laminated HOA slip. Kyle read it, turned it over, then squinted at it like it might reveal a hidden message if he stared long enough. "This isn't a permit," he said slowly. "This is a screenshot of an email from someone named Craig that says, 'Sure, sounds okay.'" "That's implied consent," Karen insisted. "That's a vague maybe," Kyle corrected. Then he turned to me. "Mind if I take a look inside the barn?" I shrugged. "Be my guest." I unlocked the doors, stepped back, and watched as Kyle walked into what could only be described as a shipping-themed fever dream. Boxes toppled as he stepped through the mess. The goat bleated at him. The chicken gave him side-eye. He poked around for 5 minutes, came out, and said, "Yep, that's illegal use of private property if I've ever seen it." Karen gasped like someone had slapped her with a wet sponge. "You're taking his side?" "I'm taking the side of the law, ma'am," Kyle said. Then he added, "Also, you've got a lot of stuff in there that looks questionable." "Those are beauty products." Karen snapped. "One box says import restrictions may apply in 6 languages, Kyle replied. "And this other one has no label at all, just a picture of what I hope is a Bluetooth speaker." The protest started to lose steam after that. One of the sign ladies realized she had yoga in 30 minutes and left. The others trickled off not long after, leaving Karen alone with her warped packages, shattered fork, and dwindling audience. Her live stream comments had turned from supportive to savage. Someone wrote, "Why didn't you lease a storage unit like a normal person?" Another said, "This isn't barnfluencing. It's barnfoolery." I could have rubbed it in. Could have gloated, posted a video of my own, maybe even charged admission for a tour of the madness. But instead, I just gave Karen a smile as I locked the barn back up and walked away again. Because the truth was, this wasn't over. Karen was cooking up something. I could see it in her eyes. The same wild-eyed determination she'd had when she tried to install solar panels on my roof without asking. She wasn't giving up. She was regrouping. And I, for one, was ready. Because the next move in this ridiculous game wasn't going to be made by her. It was going to be made by me. I knew Karen wasn't going to take the barn lockout lying down. She had too much pride, too many followers, and just enough delusion to think she could still win. So when the HOA announced an emergency meeting to address the ongoing barn conflict, I made a big pitcher of iced tea, loaded up every second of footage from my security cameras onto a flash drive, and printed copies of every relevant land deed, HOA regulation, and even a zoning map with the words, "private property," highlighted in obnoxious yellow. I didn't want justice. I wanted overkill. The meeting was held in the HOA clubhouse. A building that looked like a dentist's waiting room had been given a lukewarm coat of paint and a Keurig machine. I walked in wearing my cleanest pair of jeans and a t-shirt that said, "Don't tread on me unless you're a goat." Karen was already there, perched at the head of the table like she was about to conduct an orchestra. She wore a blazer and a silk scarf like she was testifying before Congress, and she had a stack of folders that looked like legal documents but were probably just her old Etsy receipt. The board members sat stiffly in their chairs, clearly regretting every decision that had led them to this point in their lives. Myrna, the secretary, gave me a tight smile that was mostly molars. Todd, the HOA president, was sweating through his shirt like he was on trial himself. Karen stood up, cleared her throat, and launched into a speech she'd clearly rehearsed in the mirror 100 times. She talked about innovation, community, opportunity. She described her barn operation as a grassroots e-commerce initiative bringing prosperity to underutilized rural structures. I nearly choked on my tea. When she started crying, actual tears, about how the shutdown had cost her potential investors and damaged her mental health, I looked over at the sheriff. Sheriff Dunleavy had shown up halfway through her monologue and was leaning against the back wall with his arms crossed, watching her like someone watching a possum try to play dead on command. He caught my eye and winked. Then it was my turn. I walked up slowly, like I was about to give a eulogy, plugged in the flash drive, and played the footage. Karen's expression changed about 5 seconds in, right around the part where she declared, "This barn is mine now," to her phone camera. The room got real quiet. You could hear the whir of the projector and someone in the back unwrapping a Werther's original. There she was, in full high-definition glory, hauling boxes into my barn, yelling at the goats to move their dumb hooves, and telling one of the delivery guys, "Don't worry, I got the keys from Craigslist." That particular line earned a solid gasp from Myrna. I paused the footage and passed out the deed to my property. Then the HOA bylaws. Then a zoning map. Then a written statement from the guy at the local hardware store confirming that Karen had bought the broken lock in a panic and asked for something that says, "I own this now." Todd cleared his throat and tried to salvage things. "This is certainly unexpected. Karen, do you have any documentation proving you had permission?" Karen held up her laminated email again. I watched the life drain from Todd's face as he read it. "This just says, looks fine to me, Craig." "Who is Craig?" Karen blinked. "He's the sub-assistant planning advisor for the Regional Development Committee." "No," said Myrna, peering at the email. "He's the assistant manager at the copy store." Karen opened her mouth, then closed it. Then opened it again, like a fish gasping on dry land. Sheriff Dunleavy stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Since I'm here, I'd like to inform everyone that my department received a request from federal authorities. Apparently, some of the items stored in that barn match the description of contraband electronics being sold on an unlicensed site that's been flagged for fraud. We're not accusing anyone yet," he said slowly, "but let's just say they're very interested in speaking with the person who imported 3 crates of mystery tech labeled as decorative wall units." Karen's jaw unhinged like she'd just heard the roof was made of snakes. She stammered something about drop shipping and third-party vendors and not knowing what was in all the boxes, which wasn't exactly the airtight defense she thought it was. I leaned back in my chair, sipping my tea and enjoying the show. The board, once so cautious and indecisive, suddenly came to life. Myrna motioned to suspend Karen's HOA privileges until further notice. Todd seconded it with the energy of a man desperate to move on with his life. A vote was taken. Karen lost 9-0. Even her friend Denise abstained, pretending to check her phone the entire time. Karen stood up in a rage. "This is an attack on small businesses. I'll sue. I'll go public. My fans will destroy you." I smiled. "I'll send them a tour brochure." Karen stormed out, knocking over a folding chair on her way. Sheriff Dunleavy followed her, probably to make sure she didn't try to light the place on fire. I packed up my things, thanked the board for their time, and left the clubhouse feeling 20 pounds lighter. It was over. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke up to find someone had egged my mailbox. Except it wasn't eggs. It was organic protein shakes in glass bottles. I stepped onto the porch and squinted down the road just in time to see Karen's SUV peel off in a cloud of road dust. That's when it hit me. This wasn't over. Karen had been humiliated, sure. But humiliation is fuel for her. She doesn't back down. She doesn't accept reality. She doubles down, triples down. Karen doesn't quit. She reloads. So I did what any reasonable person would do in my shoes. I went to town. I bought more locks, more cameras, motion-activated sprinklers, and a custom-made sign that read, "Trespassers will be filmed, fined, and potentially turned into content for public humiliation." Because if Karen wanted to make this a public spectacle, I was ready to give her a season finale she'd never forget. The legal notice showed up on my doorstep in an envelope so unnecessarily dramatic, it practically screamed, "Karen sent this." Thick ivory cardstock, a wax seal with what looked like a butterfly logo, and gold-embossed lettering that read "Official Notice of Civil Action." I opened it with the same energy one uses to crack open a jar of pickles that's been welded shut. Inside, I found exactly what I expected. Karen was suing me. The grounds? Emotional distress, business interference, property damage, and unlawful detainment of brand materials. She even claimed I'd caused irreversible trauma to her online following by publicly humiliating her during the HOA meeting. My personal favorite line: "Client has suffered psychological erosion due to unplanned barn denial." I laughed so hard I spilled my coffee. Apparently, her legal team consisted of a guy she met in a motivational seminar who called himself Coach Barry, and had a business card that just said "Law and Lifestyle Solutions," with a picture of him holding a dumbbell and a gavel. I wasn't too worried, but I also wasn't going to let it slide. So I called my cousin Tammy. Tammy is a lawyer, a real one, the kind who doesn't own a ring light and definitely doesn't take cases based on revenge barn streaming. She read through Karen's claims, looked at me dead in the eye, and said, "This is the legal equivalent of a tantrum in a shopping cart." Then she got to work dismantling it piece by piece. Court was scheduled for 2 weeks later. I showed up in a button-down shirt, clean jeans, and boots that had only a mild dusting of chicken coop on them. Karen arrived in a white suit, heels that looked like they came from a futuristic clown store, and a stack of papers taller than a hay bale. She strutted in like she was starring in a courtroom drama, and everyone else was just an extra. Her legal representative, Barry, wore a Bluetooth headset and sunglasses inside the building. He kept calling the judge bro. The courtroom was a small-town setup with wood paneling, squeaky chairs, and a judge named Linda who'd been dealing with local nonsense for 3 decades and had zero patience for people who thought a TikTok following counted as credentials. She asked both parties to make their opening statements. Karen stood up and launched into a theatrical monologue about betrayal, branding, and being silenced by rural oppression. She cried 3 times and used the phrase "visionary entrepreneur" at least 6. When it was my turn, I calmly handed over the footage. All of it. The break-in, the deliveries, the "this barn is mine now" declaration, the box full of illegal tech, the fake permits, the goat chewing her invoice folders. Judge Linda watched it in silence, her expression slowly settling into something between disgust and deep fatigue. When the video ended, she turned to Karen. "Ma'am," she said slowly, "you broke into someone's barn. You used it as a warehouse. You lied to your HOA, endangered livestock, violated property law, and now you want to sue the actual owner of the barn for locking the doors on you." Karen blinked. "That's a very narrow interpretation." "No," said Judge Linda, "that's the law." The gavel came down hard. Case dismissed. Karen was ordered to pay court fees, restitution for property damages, and legal costs. She screamed. Not dramatically. Not even tearfully. Just a full-volume, rage-soaked, guttural scream like a car alarm going off inside a gymnasium. She stormed out of the courtroom with Barry in tow, shouting about appeals and cancel culture. I went to celebrate with Tammy by getting pie at the diner down the street. While we were eating, my phone buzzed. A friend sent me a link. Apparently, Karen's meltdown had been recorded by someone in the gallery and was now trending under the tag #BarnJustice. By the next morning, it had over 1 million views. Someone even remixed her scream into a techno beat and uploaded it to a music app. The song was called "You Locked My Brand Inside." It hit number 5 in viral downloads. The next few weeks were peaceful, until a tour bus showed up in front of the barn. It started with a small group of locals who wanted to see the now famous crime barn. I laughed and gave them a brief tour. Then more came. Someone made a website. Local businesses asked if they could set up snack stand. Before I knew it, I was hosting a full-blown weekend attraction. I didn't charge admission, but donations started pouring in, and someone handed me a shirt that said, "I survived Karen's warehouse." I leaned into it. I printed shirts, started selling jars of honey with custom labels that read "Barn Sweet Justice," and let the goats roam the tour path in bow ties. One of them headbutt a Karen cutout we put near the door, and the crowd went wild. A local barbecue truck started parking outside every Saturday and named their signature dish Karen's Slow Burn. It had 5 kinds of hot sauce and a warning label. Then, one day, I got a final package delivered to my porch. No return address. Just a pale pink envelope and a handwritten note inside. It read, "You may have won the battle, but the world isn't done hearing from me. Watch your feed." It wasn't signed, but there was a lipstick kiss at the bottom and a suspicious smear of glitter. I laughed, shook my head, and threw it in the fireplace. The truth is, Karen probably will try something else. Maybe not a barn, maybe not here, but somewhere. She'll pop up again, dressed in delusion and armed with poorly laminated dreams. But not on my land. Because the barn is locked, the cameras are rolling, the goats are vigilant, and I've got a waiting list for next Saturday's barbecue. And if Karen ever rolls back down my gravel drive with another truckload of packages and a big fake grin, she's going to find one thing waiting for her. A sign nailed to the front of the barn. It reads, "Not today, Karen. Not today."